Hello and welcome to Original Soundchat, where video game music is a work of art. On each episode, it's our goal to help you learn about 2 soundtracks from the world of games, as well as the people, stories, and critical tracks behind them. My name is DeVader.
And I'm Peter Spezia. We're brought to you by Anonymous Dinosaur and Rhymes with Asia. It's time to appreciate great OSTs and the games they come from without getting too bogged down in music theory. Joe, what are this week's games?
Up first is 2016's Shantae, Half-Genie Hero, the Genie Girls HD debut, with a wonderful hand-drawn art style and a ridiculously catchy soundtrack to go along with it.
Following that is the open-world JRPG on Wii, with a future sight sword that delivers one of the console's best soundtracks, 2010's Xenoblade Chronicles. I mean, for a theme, it's pretty tough. You could say games that are pretty inspired by anime, I guess. But I think an interesting one is that, these are soundtracks that are, not as well-known projects from composers that we love. I think it's no surprise that we love Jake Kaufman and his work. But this isn't the first Shantae game you think of. Also, did you know Yoko Shimomura worked on Xenoblade?
I didn't until today.
Yeah, exactly. So I think these are just lesser known projects from these 2 amazing composers. But also, this was the scramble. This is no longer Naughty Dog week.
Yeah. This is Last of Us was supposed to come out this week, and then it didn't. So, crap, what is coming out this week?
Yeah, so 2 related games, and we'll get to talking about those. But first, Joe, what are you playing?
Actually, just a couple of days ago, I played Super Hot.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It was very interesting. It was a neat little game. I enjoyed it.
Yeah. When you get to play the VR version, I think that's the superior take on it. But yeah, good to play that. I platinumed Persona 5 Royal. Yeah. It's a pretty easy platinum. And I did that all in one run. You don't have to get all the social links, the confidants. It's that easy of a platinum, let's just say that. A couple weird trophies, but nothing that you can't, have an alternate save and then grind out on certain days. You have to visit the maid cafe, almost 4 or 5 times. It's a little crazy. But yeah, 101 hours, level 99 party. I'm pretty happy with what they did, as far as obviously the quality of life improvements, but also the new story. All the new stuff is, I think, handled pretty well. It's definitely the definitive way to play Persona 5 is Royal.
I look forward to one day playing Royal, but we'll see. I have a lot of other games on the list before that, so we'll get there.
Yeah, I'm a little scared. This game defined my quarantine time so far here in these COVID-19 times. 100 hours, and I'm now going to Final Fantasy VII. Actually, I may be playing the 2 games that we're talking about this week, but Final Fantasy VII Remake after that, and it's going to be nice to not have a mammoth game for a while.
So, we don't really have any composer follow-up news today, because it's been kind of a slow news time overall. Most things seem to be waiting to ramp up to some of the big releases in a couple of weeks. So let's just jump right in to the first game, being Shantae, Half-Genie Hero. Now, Shantae, Half-Genie Hero was originally released on PC, PlayStation 4, PlayStation Vita, Wii U, and Xbox One on December 20th, 2016. Hey, it was a birthday release for me that year.
Hey.
And then a Switch release would then follow on June 8th, 2017. It was developed and published by WayForward Technologies, though the retail versions, the physical versions of the game, for PS4 and Switch were published by Xseed Games in the US, P-Cube Games in the UK, and Oizumi Amusio Incorporated in Japan. It is the 4th game in the Shantae series, and we've actually talked about the game that came right before this already, being Shantae and the Pirate's Curse, which is my personal favorite game in the series. But Half-Genie Hero is the first Shantae game to ever be developed specifically for home consoles. Before this, Shantae lived on handheld devices like the Game Boy the DSi, or the 3DS. So, in case you didn't listen to that last Shantae episode that was like a year ago, Shantae is a series of 2D platformers / Metroidvanias in which the player takes control of the hair-whipping titular character Shantae, a half-genie guardian of a place called Scuttletown in the land of Sequinland. As a quick overview, we've talked about a couple of Metroidvanias on this show. It's basically a sort of game where you are gaining new abilities as you go, and these new abilities unlock different parts of the map that let you make more progress, etc., etc. It's more of an open-ended thing than a linear platformer, except, unlike Pirate's Curse, which is basically a straight-up Metroidvania, Half-Genie Hero is more built around just linear action stages, but these action stages do have some branches that you can only access using abilities that you would get later in the game, but none of them are like all that substantial. So it's more of a straightforward linear game than something like Pirate's Curse or Risky's Revenge would be, but these levels can be replayed at any time, which adds to that sort of progression feeling there. In Pirate's Curse, the abilities were represented by finding various pirate items, so like a sword or a cannon or something like that. But in this game, it goes back to Shantae's roots, being that she can learn several different dances that allow her to transform into different animals, including an elephant, a monkey, a crab, a bat, a mouse, even a mermaid. And each of these forms actually provides Shantae with an ability that she did not previously have. So for instance, the crab and the mermaid let her maneuver better underwater. I think the crab actually lets her go down and walk on the ground underwater, while the mermaid lets her swim freely, basically. That kind of thing. But the bat lets her fly so she can cross large gaps, that kind of thing. It's essentially the same thing, but, you know, you're doing a dance and turning into an animal instead of pulling out a scabbard and charging forward. The story of Half-Genie Hero begins with Shantae waking up one night to the sound of a mysterious voice that claims to be a messenger from the genie realm. This messenger warns her that a great evil is approaching, one that only she can defeat. She awakens to find that this encounter was merely a dream and immediately goes to talk to her uncle Mimic to get his advice. Mimic is working on a special invention called the Dynamo, which he hopes will power Scuttletown and keep it protected. This talk is quickly interrupted, though, because Shantae's greatest enemy, the evil pirate Risky Boots, lays siege to Scuttletown and attempts to steal the blueprints for the Dynamo. Shantae foils Risky's plans and agrees to help Uncle Mimic complete his invention by traveling across Sequinland to find the components he still needs to complete it. Along with the help of her friends, the bird tamer Sky, the air-headed hero Bolo, and the weirdly thirsty zombie Roddy Tops, Shantae must figure out what Risky is planning and also help complete the Dynamo, while also figuring out what is the great evil that the messenger of the genies was warning her about. And this is where I will ask, Peter, what are your experiences with Shantae Half-Genie Hero?
Still haven't played a Shantae game, even since Pirate's Curse. And Pirate's Curse, I mean, if it's your favorite, it seems to be like the one to start with. But I cannot deny that I do love this Jake Kaufman music.
It is very good. Pirate's Curse is definitely my favorite. I think it is the best game of the series. I have not played the original Game Boy game, and I don't like Risky's Revenge, the little I have played of it. Half-Genie Hero is pretty good. I enjoyed my time with it, and yeah. Now, there's not a lot of behind-the-scenes info on this game's development. There are some tidbits, because they did do videos for Kickstarter backers, and some of those were put on YouTube, but for the most part, it's not a lot of information I think is unique to this game. For instance, one of the things that they talked about actually really blends into the most important change between Half-Genie Hero and Pirate's Curse, being that, unlike the rest of the Shantae series, Half-Genie Hero does not use sprites. It instead uses hand-drawn animation to represent characters and environments and stuff like that. So according to animators, the process of this would of course involve designers drawing the character in a pose that they felt would be highly indicative of the action that they wanted that character to be performing. So like the example they used was like a spider lady who they wanted to get the attack animation. And so they drew her like mid swing. And that was apparently enough information for the animators to go, oh, all right, we know what you want, roughly. And they would just do it. Apparently Inti Creates also helped out with the animations in question. The environments, though, were a mix of hand-drawn stuff, but also 3D models. And one of their major obstacles, apparently, according to the environment designers, was they felt like WayForward in general had built this sort of aesthetic that was like very indicative of their work, with stuff like Mighty Switch Force and Shantae and DuckTales and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And they wanted to make sure that this aesthetic still came across, even in the 3D models, which was not something they usually did. And so that was apparently their first big obstacle. And I think they did a great job. I actually forgot that the environments in this game were 3D models, which is hilarious not because they weren't memorable, but because I just sort of forgot. I kind of figured they were just hand-drawn too, but I guess not. So the game was officially unveiled in September 2013 with a slated release date of October 2014. Now, if you're keeping score, they didn't make that. And the reason is because they made so much money on the Kickstarter that was announced alongside this game announcement. They were asking for $400,000 and ended up raising $776,884 with the help of 18,558 backers. And so then, after the campaign ended, they continued to take what is referred to as slacker backer contributions through PayPal, which brought the raised amount over $950,000. So almost a cool mill to make this game. And so because it was so successful, they made so much money, they met so many stretch goals, they had all this new promise stuff, they kind of pushed back from all right, so maybe this game's not coming out in 2014. Let's be real here. And so they gave themselves a further release window. Obviously, it didn't come out until about 2 years after it was initially promised, which, I mean, the game still came out good, so that's good. And the game has received rather favorable reviews since it released. Its Metacritic is currently sitting at 81, and most reviews, of course, praised its art style and its soundtrack, but some reviews kind of voiced some disappointment that the plot is largely disconnected from what happens in Pirate's Curse. And it seems to be just a soft reboot of the series almost. It's kind of weird in that way. But like, for the most part, reviews were pretty high. In fact, Famitsu, which I don't think I ever read the name Famitsu when talking about indie games, basically ever, they gave it a 33 out of 40, which is pretty good for them. According to Xseed Games, their limited release Ultimate Day 1 edition of Shantae Half-Genie Hero, which they published in partnership with WayForward, was the fastest selling product in the company's history. And of course, the reason we're talking about this game today is because another sequel, Shantae and the Seven Sirens, releases on PC and consoles this Thursday, May 28th, but if you happen to have access to the platform Apple Arcade, the game has actually been out for about a month or so in full, so you can actually play it right now if you have access to that service. I personally do not. I'm waiting for it to come out on Switch, where I'm going to play heck out of it, and am very much looking forward to that and more Jake Kaufman music. So, yeah.
I don't know why I thought there was a game between Half-Genie Hero and Seven Sirens. So I look up Shantae on Wikipedia, and I see that it's created by Aaron Bozon and Matt Bozon. And I'm like, that last name sounds familiar. Well, Mark Bozon, who is apparently Matt's brother, worked at IGN back in the day, the Matt Casamassina days of Nintendo coverage on IGN. So like that's interesting. And then I scroll down a little bit further, and then when we're talking about voice actresses and things like that, it looks like Roddy Tops is voiced by Jeremy Lee. And I'm like, oh, as someone who just romanced Makoto in Persona 5, I'm like, that is great.
That's really funny. She's the best character in these games too. So, hey, there seems to be a pattern here. So, normally we would talk about a composer. But this one's going to be kind of weird because the music in Shantae Half-Genie Hero was done by Jake Kaufman. But there is a vocalist involved in a small amount of the music, and I figured, hey, let's talk about her. Why not? And this vocalist's name is Cristina V. Maybe you've heard of her. Her full name is Cristina Danielle Valenzuela, and she was born on July 11th, 1987 in Los Angeles, California. And alongside being a vocalist, like I said, she is also well known as a voice actor for movies, anime, and video games. Especially nowadays, she's one of the bigger names in voice acting.
Yeah, she's definitely made a career for herself.
Growing up, she actually wanted to be an animator, but those dreams changed to being a voice actor after she watched an episode of Sailor Moon, one of the most famous anime of all time. And then after attending an idol voiceover contest at the Convention Anime Expo several times. I don't know what an idol voiceover contest is.
Oh, I feel like this is something that if people know the name Kira Buckland, also now a prominent figure in that industry. Also Aaron Hansen, I think, won this kind of contest. Like Anime Expo put on this contest for a while where it's like, networking sort of thing and like, bringing a character out there, and it was some sort of contest that you could win. So I don't know. To me, that makes sense. What you're saying here. It sounds like for those that are in the Southern California area, this is like an interesting way of trying out and trying to get your foot in the door. And it's a few people in the industry who have done that kind of contest at AX.
Interesting. Well, speaking of getting a foot in the door, that's exactly what happened for V, because voice actress Wendy Lee actually invited her to audition for several shows that were being produced by Bang Zoom Entertainment in 2004 because of how much she took part in these contests. Her first major role was gotten shortly after that, playing the character Canaria in the anime Rosen Maiden. Not familiar with that character, never watched Rosen Maiden. I recognize the name, but, and at this time, by the way, she was still attending college. She was going to the California State University at Long Beach and majoring in theater arts, where she did not graduate from that school until 2007. So she had started her career before she even left college. She has since become a major player in voice acting, especially in anime. She also served as one of the hosts of Funimation and Crunchyroll's Anime TV alongside Johnny Young Bosch, another big name in voice acting. And she also has a YouTube channel where she uploads covers and animated music videos, so you should go check her out. Just search Cristina V. It's just Cristina V. Just search that on YouTube. You'll find it.
VEE for what it's worth.
Yes. So, in terms of discography, I figured I'll just list parts she's had. Now, this is not all of the parts that she has had, because we would actually be here for like half an hour if I listed every single character she's ever played. These are just specifically the ones that I recognize personally. So, she was the voice of Mio Akiyama in K-On!, Homura Akemi in Puella Magi Madoka Magica, Sakura Mato in Fate Zero, which, weirdly enough, we've talked about on this show. My favorite one, she is the current voice of Rei Hino / Sailor Mars in Sailor Moon. So, the show that inspired her to get into voice acting in the first place, she's now part of it. Mosquito Girl in One Punch Man, Marjolaine in Little Witch Academia, Miki Makamura in Devilman Crybaby, Darkness in Konosuba. She's so good in that part. Toma in The Promised Neverland, Sheila in Beastars, and Marinette Dupin Shang / Ladybug in Miraculous Tales of Ladybug and Cat Noir. And then in terms of games, which is a little closer to our sort of territory, she has played multiple characters in the BlazBlue series. She played Carmen Sandiego in the official Facebook app back in 2011. Don't know what that means, but sure. She is the current voice of Riven the Exile in League of Legends, as well as Lian Shi in the Dynasty Warriors franchise as of Dynasty Warriors 7. She plays Sarabella in Skullgirls. She's actually the official voice of Shantae and Risky Boots. She is one of the avatar voices in Xenoblade Chronicles X, being the female avatar Peppy option. She plays Ophelia in Octopath Traveler, Mari in Judgment, Hasebe Kazumi in River City Girls, where she also performs the main theme of the game, Tsitsi in Indivisible, where she also served as the voice director and producer for that game, and most recently, she voiced both Charlotta and Fairy in Grand Blue Fantasy Versus, so she has played a lot of really big stuff. Back to Shantae, though. Let's get into some historical development research. Luckily, one of those Kickstarter videos was actually specifically with Jake Kaufman and him talking about the music for the game. It wasn't a huge amount of information, but it was enough to pull some morsels out of. For instance, Kaufman says that his main excitement was that now that Shantae was moving to consoles, it meant that he was no longer held back by the sound quality on platforms like the DS or 3DS, because as much as I love the 3DS, not the best speakers in the world. He was now able to go all out for this new title, and because of that, and because of how successful the Kickstarter campaign was, he now had the opportunity to bring in live musicians to record their parts, including more exotic instruments that fit the style of Shantae, though when he said the name of the example he used, I actually could not understand what he was saying.
I wonder if it's like the Buzuki, because like everything's the Buzuki.
Maybe. Yeah, it sounded like he was saying the uru, which is an instrument. It's like a stringed instrument out of China that I had never heard of. But that's what it sounded like. I watched that part of the video like 3 times trying to figure out what instrument he was talking about. But he also says that V was not just chosen because she was the voice of Shantae to provide vocals for the main theme, which we will talk about in a second. It was also because, in his opinion, she has the ability to take on any style of music and absolutely kill it. And you can actually, I feel like I keep forgetting to point this out on soundtracks where it is a thing. You can go buy this soundtrack right now on Bandcamp under Jake Kaufman's page. So if you like what you hear in the coming segment, absolutely go throw him some money. It's a great soundtrack, and you can also buy a bunch of other very good soundtracks on Bandcamp. So, with that, it's time to stop stalling and get to what this game actually sounds like. And we got to start with my favorite song in the game. It is critical track number 1, Dance Through the Danger. Of course, the vocals for this song were done by Cristina V. This is the main theme of the game. It actually plays during the opening level, but only the first time you play it. If you go back and replay the opening level, it's a different song, unfortunately.
Aw, boo.
This song is so good. I almost wanted to talk about this game on this show for this song alone. It is super good. Cristina V's vocals are so great. It's so high energy. It feels like Shantae should feel. And the instant that this song started up in that first level, I knew that this game was going to be something special and that I was going to have a good time.
Yeah, you don't hear it in the clip, but it starts with those new instruments, and then here in the chorus for the clip, like it's so high energy with those electronic backed bass and all that. You can really tell that like Coffin was unchained here.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Like this is the song where you could tell like, oh, we upped the ante a little bit. And It is so good. It is such a step up. I'm so looking forward to hearing whatever other vocal songs show up in Seven Sirens, because I'm pretty sure there's at least one. I haven't heard it, but there's at least one. Yeah, this song is great. It's a perfect introduction to the game. And then we'll get into our second critical track. I'm going to say what I think the actual title is, even though that's not what's listed on the site. Because what? It is Counterfeit Mermaids or Counterfeit Mermaids? Counterfeit makes the most sense, but on the Bandcamp page, it is actually specifically down as Counterfeit Mermaids. I think it's a typo, personally. That just never got caught. But who knows? Who am I to question Jake Kaufman? He knows what he's doing more than I do. This is the level music for Part 2 of the very first area of the game, Mermaid Falls. It's a factory in which young girls are being kidnapped and turned into fake mermaids. I don't remember why or if this is ever addressed, but it's happening. And honestly, I just like this song because it's got a hell of a groove to it. Like, how could you listen to this and not just sort of move your body, dance along to the stuff? It starts out a little weak with the dun 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 dun. But then gets into the real groovy parts with the da-da-da-da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da-da-da-da. It's super good. I love it. It's great.
It's songs like this that, nothing against T-Lopes or Jun Sonoe, but it's songs like this that make me wish Jake Kaufman had a crack at a Sonic the Hedgehog soundtrack.
He'd do great at Sonic, honestly.
Mm-hmm. He really, really would. This is just like a perfect example of that, I think. It's, so catchy.
So, let's get into the next one that is, again, a weird typo, but this one's a bit better, being Tasseltown. On the Bandcamp page, it is spelled Tassle. In game, it is spelled Tassel. Who knows?
And because it's, misspelled on the Bandcamp page, when it goes to vgmdb.net, it's also carrying over that misspelling there. So it's like, I guess that's the official title on the album, for better or for worse.
I guess. This plays at the beginning of Tasseltown and for a good chunk of it, as you might have guessed, as Shantae is entering a city that has been reduced to desert ruins. And I really like this song because it kind of feels a little bit different from the rest of the soundtrack in that it's jazzy. It's like jazz, but mixing in some of those exotic instruments that Kaufman was talking about. Like, I think it's a sitar in there at certain points.
Could be.
But just, that's not a mix you ever think about. Like, just this sort of Arabian feeling song, but it's jazz? Huh. Interesting combination. And it works. It works really well. I like the song a lot.
I think something that defines Kaufman's music really well is like strong bass backing, but also like really driving that emphasis on melody. Melody is everything. Yeah,
100%. Like you talked a lot about that. I think he mentioned that in interviews. You were mentioning that when we talked about Shovel Knight back in the day.
Oh, and that one in particular, that's when you're limited to the NES sound chip sort of emulation style. But even this, like, it carries forward for sure.
My favorite non-vocal song in the game, though, is our critical track number 4. It is The Sky Bridge. This is the level music for Part 2 of Tasseltown, where you must navigate more desert ruins, but now you are up in the air because you've climbed a tower, and things are sort of crumbling around you. This song actually legit gives me chills with the intro. It is my favorite non-vocal piece, like I said, and I think this is the one that leans the hardest into the Fantasy Arabia aesthetic on the soundtrack. Because, like, wow, this song is Arabian as hell, and it works so well. It kind of reminds me of something I'd hear in Pirate's Curse, because, I don't know, that soundtrack seems to go a bit harder into the Arabian thing as a lot of this soundtrack does. And that's a good thing, because I really, really like the soundtrack of Pirate's Curse, but this song is so good. Oh, it's so good.
Yeah, it's definitely great, and I feel, like you said, it's what you'd expect in a Shantae game.
I think the part that gets me the most is the during the intro when you hear the backing, which is the dun 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 dun, and then that turns into the sort of like, it's not really the melody, because then the melody comes in and it's also super awesome with the dun 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 dun. I gotta stop singing during these parts because I'm not as good as the song, but yeah, love this song. And of course, for our 5th critical track, the final one, it is Dynamo. This is the music for the final boss, where you are attempting to save the genie realm from Risky Boots attempting to corrupt it with dark energy and turn the genies evil. This is like a really sinister and determined sounding song that is kind of reminding you that, hey, the stakes are really high right now, like really, really high, and the game goes from like these orchestral parts and then swerves really hard into rock, and then I feel like blends both of them together eventually. And I don't think it's as cool as any of the boss music in Pirate's Curse overall, but I think that this song does a great job at bringing across the actual emotions you're supposed to feel when fighting this boss. It's really good.
Yeah, big stakes, and I was listening to it for the first time, like, if this isn't a final boss theme, someone goofed somewhere.
Yeah, this is the final boss theme of the game. So, don't worry. They knew. So, for the cutting room floor, I got 2 songs. The first one is Cape Crustacean. This is the level music for the Magic Carpet Race in, you guessed it, Cape Crustacean. It is a fast-paced song, ready for a race. It's got really good energy. It's just another really fun song that I really like, but I don't think it's Critical 5 material, so it's here.
Sonic the Hedgehog! Come on, seriously with this one.
Like, I didn't think about that until you brought it up, but yeah. Yeah, Sega. Why don't you... Like, you're giving fans the ability to make stuff like Mania. Just bring some Jake Kaufman magic into Mania 2. Come on, let's do it.
I don't want to take the work away from them, from T-Lopes, from Jun Sonoe, but like we got asked one time when it's like, what's the composer franchise mashup that you most want to see? Like, oop, I think this is at the top of the list now.
I think they should bring him in to do a couple of songs. Maybe not the whole soundtrack, but like, bring him in to collaborate. Come on, let's let him do some stuff. My second song on the cutting room floor is Roddy Top's song. So I like the Pirate's Curse version of this song a lot more because it's a lot more high energy than this, which I think fits Roddy Top's a lot better. But I can't go this episode without mentioning my girl. She's the best character in the game. I love her. And while it took a little while to grow on me, I do really like the more subdued hip-hop style of this song. And I don't know, it grows on you eventually. I like the song a lot.
It's like when we talked about in Street Fighter V, when we talked about Cody's theme, or no, Ed's theme.
Yeah.
It has a similar vibe to that one, I feel.
Little bit. I feel like you could probably use this song as a pretty good backing for a rap.
Yes, I agree.
So, what will I never forget about Shantae Half-Genie Hero? I mean, it's not as good as Pirate's Curse. I know I keep repeating myself and saying that. Unfortunately, it just isn't, both in terms of gameplay and soundtrack, but it is a very, very close second for me. It's just, this is not to say that like, oh, this is just not as good as Pirate's Curse. Pirate's Curse is really, really good and is a very high bar. And if I'm expecting every Shantae game to pass that high bar, then I'm being unjustly unfair to the series. I think this game is really good, and I'm very much looking forward to playing Seven Sirens. So, for our transition, we'd like to highlight a fan remix or cover, and I managed to find a metal cover of Dance Through the Danger that actually brought Cristina V in to do the vocals again, which adds to it, I feel like. It is by YouTuber Richard EB, that is Richaadeb. It's super good, so please enjoy that, and we will be right back.
So for the second time this year, I am talking about a game from the Xenoblade series. A series which I have not played. So during episode 50 at the beginning of the year, when I covered Xenoblade Chronicles X, it made sense to talk about it at the time. It's a soundtrack that I knew I wanted to bring to the show. It was talking about Hiroyuki Sawano. I have to talk about Sawano eventually. And it was an episode where we covered the story of Tetsuya Takahashi, who's like the brains behind these games. Not only this game, but like the Xeno meta series. Xenogears, Xenosaga, the creation of Monolith Soft. If you want all that history, that is in that episode 50. But when we're scrambling to pick two new games, and what's coming out this week instead of Naughty Dog game The Last of Us Part 2, Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition comes out this week on Nintendo Switch. And you know what has a great soundtrack? Xenoblade Chronicles. So, this game was released in Japan as Xenoblade on June 10th, 2010 for Nintendo Wii. Europe and Australia got the game on August 19th and September 1st, 2011, respectively. But Xenoblade Chronicles finally reached North America on April 6th, 2012.
It was an Operation Rainfall game, wasn't it?
It sure was, and that is the big crux of the development history, which we'll get to. But yes, in case if you do remember the term Operation Rainfall, this was the crown jewel of that effort. Eventually, for Wii U, an eShop version of the game launched there in April 2016. Then it was the year before or so where Xenoblade Chronicles 3D was an exclusive game to new Nintendo 3DS in April 2015. Probably one of the only handful of games that you needed the new Nintendo 3DS and the extra power there to play Xenoblade Chronicles 3D. But Nintendo Switch gets the definitive edition launching this week, May 29th, 2020. The game is developed by Monolith Soft and published by Nintendo. It is an open-world action RPG like we've discussed with Xenoblade Chronicles X, where the player controls one member of a party of 3, as opposed to that game where it was like you only control your customizable avatar and then you had a few other members in your party. So here you got a party of 3, you control one member in that party there. And it's kind of reminiscent of an MMORPG, a massively multiplayer online game, where it's the big open world. The characters auto-attack enemies if they're within a certain radius of the enemy, and you have all these abilities that are on a series of cooldown timers. But for Xenoblade Chronicles, the focus is on exploration, quest completion, and item collection, while the main story moves along with many cutscenes. There's also an affinity system at play that tracks characters' relationships with locations as well as other party members, and this can lead to narrative moments like, new scenes or in-battle benefits. The plot of Xenoblade Chronicles kind of starts out with its backstory of the world being an endless ocean until 2 titanic gods appeared and decided to wage battle. This would be the Bionis and the Mechonis. After the gods have long since frozen, now life forms live on each. This would be organic beings on the Bionis and mechanical ones on the Mechonis. And they continue this battle, this war, between themselves. So you have the protagonist of Shulk. And Shulk is a young Homs, or basically think human, scientist. So he's a Homs scientist who lives in Colony 9 on Bionis. And he is studying the Monado. The Monado is a mystical sword which grants visions of the future to its wielder when it is fully controlled. However, when the Mechon Metal Face attacks Colony 9, Shulk takes control of the Monado and swears revenge against the Mechon, which starts a long journey. Who will Shulk meet along the way, and what truths will he discover about the Mechons? So, Joe, here's where I'll ask you, what are our experiences with Xenoblade Chronicles?
I'm really bad at Shulk and Smash. I have not played Xenoblade at all. I am very much looking forward to playing this game for Smash to Pieces, but I'm kind of saving it for that because I'd prefer to go in relatively fresh for Smash to Pieces on games like Xenoblade. I am aware of Shulk. I'm aware of some of the characters. I'm looking forward to learning more about them, but until that day comes, I'm bad at Shulk and Smash.
Like I have not played Xenoblade Chronicles X, I have also not played Xenoblade Chronicles, which is weird because for a while this was one of the rarest games on Wii until it got delineated to other versions, and it's odd considering I have a copy of this game.
Really? Like a Wii copy?
Yeah, a Wii copy if you want to check that video version. Bap, bap, bow, right there. So, never popped it in the Wii, though. Which is a shame.
About a game that would end up being $100 on Wii until it got new versions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you've never played it.
Also have Metroid Prime Trilogy. It was a weird time on Nintendo Wii. But yeah, so I have the game. I've just never played it. But I feel like it was once, Shulk was confirmed for Super Smash Bros. For Wii U and 3DS, really started to explore the soundtrack out of curiosity, like what songs could be included in Super Smash Bros. From this series of Xenoblade Chronicles. Obviously had heard about it, but never really cared to research much into it. This soundtrack is amazing. It's amazing. Like, I'm looking forward to showing you some of these songs and getting to talk about it. But yeah, I am lacking in the playing experience department. So apparently the story for Xenoblade started when, in June 2006, Tetsuya Takahashi was struck with the idea of people living on the bodies of gigantic gods. And so he presented this idea to executives and they liked it. And one executive named Yasuyuki Honne thought this concept could make a really cool 3D model, and so he bought materials to create this 3D model. And it was something that inspired Takahashi and the team. It was kind of like a starting piece that was like the center of the idea for what would become Xenoblade. Because Takahashi originally envisioned the game to be called Monado, the beginning of the world. Later, then Nintendo president Satoru Iwata, may he rest in peace, suggested to change the title to Xenoblade. And this is because Takahashi had worked on previous games, like we mentioned, Xenogears, Xenosaga, and he wanted this new title to honor Takahashi's previous titles, but also really reflect the effort that he was investing in this current project. So it became Xenoblade, because the Monado is a sword. The main goal of the game is really all about striking the balance between gameplay and story. Like they said, they had to, really cut down on the cutscenes compared to what Takahashi was used to, and still, pretty sure there are a lot of cutscenes in Xenoblade Chronicles. But also, Takahashi didn't want battles to transition to another arena, like other JRPGs really did at the time. At the same time, though, he wanted the open world, but was also very daunted by the MMO feel of this. But it is that idea of, you have the open world, you encounter an enemy, you're battling right there, and it's seamless, and it really works well. They apparently also briefly experimented with a turn-based battle system, which would incorporate the feature of Shulk seeing the future with the Monado, but this did not work out. I found this quote in research, which is kind of amazing. Quote, "During the course of its development, the story underwent so many revisions that Takahashi forgot what his original concept was, although the basic framework remained intact throughout." Wow. It is a story that, from what I've heard, has quite a lot of twists and turns. So as long as there is the through line and the foundation of what they wanted this to be, and it's living on gigantic gods. The goal here, though, was also to make Shulk as likable as possible, though there were initially debates on whether or not he should be a silent protagonist. And have a voice he did.
Boy, did he.
Because the European regions really took priority in the game's Western release, the cast for the English version was British. In fact, Shulk's voice actor, Adam Howden, noted how the length of some translated lines had to be further changed because they were essentially dubbing the already established timings of Japanese scenes. The Japanese versions had already been recorded with the lip flaps and all, but translated times had to sometimes change duration. Also, he voiced his lines for Shulk chronologically in-game, and he never had access to the full script. So in a way, he liked it because it was like he was discovering the story as the character would.
That's neat. I've never heard of a game do it that way. Interesting.
I haven't either, and I feel like that is certainly different. But as you noted with the term Operation Rainfall, this was a game with an interesting westward journey. For a while, a North American version of the game was not confirmed. And it was especially concerning at the time that when the game was initially revealed at E3 2009, it was still completely absent from E3 2011, despite it being confirmed for release that year in Europe and Australia. So ultimately, Xenoblade Chronicles became the crown jewel of a 3-game fan effort known as Operation Rainfall, to encourage North American releases of Japanese titles on what was then an aging Wii console. The other games being The Last Story and Pandora's Tower. Both games also successfully released in North America.
The Last Story I hear a lot about being good. Pandora's Tower, I forgot what that game was called until just now.
Right, and yeah, I don't think it was that well received either. But Last Story was Sakaguchi, right?
I believe so. That's why it's called Last Story. It's a legally distinct Final Fantasy.
Yes, from, I think it was his Mistwalker studio. So for Operation Rainfall, efforts included emails, organized campaigns, online petitions, phone calls, and messages on Nintendo's Facebook and Twitter pages. However, one of the most notable efforts was a call to fans to pre-order Xenoblade Chronicles through the original Monado Beginning of the World placeholder on Amazon. Their efforts apparently resulted in Xenoblade Chronicles becoming the #1 game in the site's pre-order gaming charts, which at the time beat The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time 3D and the PS3 bundle for Call of Duty Black Ops. Overall, a seemingly successful campaign, though in a 2013 interview, then Nintendo America president Reggie Fils-Aimé said that Nintendo was considering an American release for Xenoblade Chronicles while Operation Rainfall was active, and that while the campaign did not factor into their decision, they were aware of it and took it into account while deciding whether the release would make for a profitable release. Ultimately, Xenoblade Chronicles was released in North America as a GameStop retailer exclusive, and for a while, like I mentioned, a very valuable Wii title. The game was reviewed with high critical acclaim, with an average Metacritic score of 92, for the Wii version, at least. I think the 3DS version is like 86, something like that in there. Not as good, but still notable. It is, open for the open world. It's a very user-friendly experience in many ways, according to these reviews. And in fact, it shocked a lot of people out of linear RPGs like the Final Fantasy XIII series at the time. I think, if anything, a common critique was that the graphics look rough on Wii.
And boy, it shows more than ever now.
Yeah. You compare footage to the definitive edition on Switch, and it's like, oh yeah, that looks way better. Because of the staggered release timings, it didn't really help so much for Game Awards and things like that. At the 2011 Japan Game Awards, Xenoblade Chronicles received the Excellence Award. It was nominated for Best Wii U Game and Best RPG at the Spike VGAs in 2012, losing to New Super Mario Bros. U and Mass Effect 3. Take that for what you will about the Spike VGA's production at the time. Though it did better in online publications, Slant Magazine was a publication that gave Xenoblade Chronicles its Game of the Year award for 2012. And if I remember correctly, our friend group also had it nominated for our Game of the Year awards at the time for Show Me Your News.
I think so. That sounds right.
Xenoblade sold 200,000 copies in Japan by the end of 2013. Then there was an Iwata Asks interview for the 3D version of the game, ultimately, that would state that the game sold better in the West overall than it did in Japan. So that kind of gives you a rough idea of how many it might have sold. Though it was tough to track sales at the time because it was ignored by the NPD Group, which we now know to be a prominent sales tracker of video games, and they omitted it because it was a retailer exclusive game. The 3D version did not sell as well. Shocker, considering it was a new 3DS exclusive, with roughly 78,000 Japanese copies having been sold by the end of June 2015, and it was about the same in the West.
Ugh, that's dire.
Yet, with the ports of the game with 3D and now Definitive Edition, also you have generally standalone sequels with Xenoblade Chronicles X and Xenoblade Chronicles 2. You had the Golden Torna DLC expansion for Xenoblade Chronicles 2. The series is now actually standing on its own. Xenoblade Chronicles 2 sold 1.7 million copies. So it's now not necessarily a niche title anymore, but it's kind of holding on its own. Is that part of the Switch's success? Hard to say, but Xenoblade Chronicles is now a known quantity in the game industry. Characters such as Fiora and Metalface even appeared in Project X Zone 2, though that was along with Cosmos, the Xenogears character. So interesting to note there. But I feel like also part of the cultural recognition of this franchise is because of Shulk being included in Super Smash Bros., starting as a playable character in Wii U and 3DS. You had other characters appear in his Final Smash attack, and Ricky was an assist trophy. Though it should be noted that with the spirits in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, there are big spoilers abound there for Xenoblade Chronicles, which only makes sense. I mean, Super Smash Bros. Melee had big Ocarina of Time spoilers 3 years later. So it makes sense for Super Smash Brothers, but just something to note if you've been really holding out after all these years for Xenoblade Chronicles spoilers.
Smash does not care about spoilers. It never will.
Sakurai cares too much about video games and celebrating their history. So, this is quite the soundtrack for Xenoblade Chronicles, and the one composer that I wanted to highlight this week, I had several to choose from, but I wanted to talk about Tomori Kudo. Tomori Kudo was born on March 17th, 1974. He is a blood type B. I find it so amusing when Japanese artists have this listed somewhere. He has also gone by the aliases of Tomori in all caps or Timoki Kudo. He says that he has always listened to music growing up, specifically Japan's top 40 hits, and then he eventually took lessons for the Electone.
Add it to the list. That's another one.
Pew, pew, pew. Another on the list, the Electone and the piano from kindergarten up until about the 5th grade. He then started playing the guitar in high school because he really wanted to pursue music. As far as bands that inspired him, he says, quote, I was really into slash metal bands like Metallica for a while, then started listening to 60s, 70s blues-based hard rock bands like Led Zeppelin, before exploring 80s, 90s music like Van Halen and Guns N' Roses, and really getting into the blues before the 50s. So when he started to then dig into that blues music with like jazz licks through an artist known as Robin Ford, this led to an interest in jazz musicians like Pat Metheny, Mike Stern, and John Scofield. And I feel like we've mentioned Pat Metheny a few times.
That name does sound familiar.
Yeah, so like as far as Japanese composers getting inspiration from like Western jazz musicians, he's a name that definitely pops up. Other artist inspirations include Bjork, Madonna, Sibo Mato, the Neptunes, and Radiohead. As far as soundtrack composer inspirations, there's Gabriel Yared, Hans Zimmer, who wouldn't be inspired by Hans Zimmer, Alberto Iglesias, John Williams, and Ryuichi Sakamoto. He then formed the group Ace as a duo with himself and Hiroyo Chico Yamanaka. So why were we talking about Tomori Kudo? He is part of this group called Ace. Ace is a prominent group on the Xenoblade Chronicles soundtrack here, but in a different variation, because Ace is a duo where Kudo composes, arranges, and performs guitars, while Chico, Hiroyo Yamanaka, she writes lyrics, composes, and performs vocals. Then the group became known as Ace Plus when Kenji Hiramatsu joined. And I think he does like keyboards and things like that. So Ace Plus is comprising the 3 of 6 composers that make up the soundtrack effort for Xenoblade Chronicles here. And so when he's not composing for game music, Tomori Kudo continues to write songs for other artists, films, commercials through Universal Music. And he says, quote, I always feel inspired by music that features good harmonic structures, great performances, and simply a good sound. He is also seemingly close friends with Yasunori Mitsuda, the Chrono Trigger composer that we have highlighted on the show before. It was an Iwata Asks interview for Xenoblade Chronicles, and they were referring to each other by Chan. And it's like, oh, it's seemingly a pretty good indication there. You can follow him on Twitter at Tomori_Kudo. What has he worked on as far as his discography goes? Worked on Tamagotchi 64, Mina de Tamagotchi World, or like everyone's Tamagotchi. Worked on that as Ace. Then Ace Plus worked on songs for Bomberman 64, The Second Attack. Ace Plus worked on Xenoblade Chronicles. Then Ace, without Hiramatsu, worked on Code of Princess and Fantasy Life. When it came to Xenoblade Chronicles 2, Ace provided songs for the game, but also Hiramatsu on his own. So it was like, not necessarily Ace Plus, but still those same musicians. Tomori Kudo is the guitarist for the Mario 3D World Big Band that we've talked about before in Super Mario 3D World. So that's a neat little connection there. He's apparently also known for Emil Chronicle Online, as well as Ace contributing arrangements and vocals for Nobuo Uematsu's 10 short stories. When we talk about composers that have contributed to the Super Smash Bros. Series, whether it's through different arrangements and things like that, Ace has made quite a name for certain Smash remixes, let's put it that way. For Wii U and 3DS version, they worked on Fortress Boss, Super Mario World, Xenoblade Chronicles medley, obviously, and Sparkman stage from Mega Man 3. In Ultimate, though, that amazing Gangplank Galleon remix from Donkey Kong Country, that's Ace. Absolutely it is. Also, the title theme from Animal Crossing, Gutsman stage from Mega Man, Lament of Innocence from Castlevania Lament of Innocence, and the upbeat cover remix of Beneath the Mask from Persona 5 for that DLC.
All good stuff. Hopefully, the new character doesn't come out while we're waiting to release this episode and Ace has done a song on there. Otherwise, we're immediately... That's what I'm always worried about. Every time where it's like, what if they drop a Smash like a Smash thing tomorrow? And... but yeah, they have done some kick-ass, like really, really good sound remixes for Smash. Some of the best that the series has seen.
Absolutely. And I think that only translates into Xenoblade Chronicles. When it comes to the soundtrack and development research for that, as I mentioned, the game has 6 composers. There's Manami Kiyota, and this was like her first big composing effort. Like she technically, I guess, like took the lead as far as the bulk of the work. She did 50 songs on the soundtrack and mostly like environmental pieces. You have the 3 composers from Ace Plus, again being Tomori Kudo, Hiroyo Yamanaka, and Kenji Hiramatsu. They did 29 songs, primarily a lot of battle pieces. Yoko Shimomura, I guess, apparently led the music team with her expertise, and she contributed 11 songs to the soundtrack. And then Yasunori Mitsuda contributed 1 song, the ending theme, Beyond the Sky. He was apparently brought in because of his familiarity with Takahashi and his Xeno projects. So yeah, Takahashi was deeply involved, apparently constantly rejecting pieces due to what he felt was not fitting for this game. He apparently admitted that this was really due to like early samples that he had given the team, like being his vision for the music, and that they followed it like too faithfully. Like he kind of wanted them to like kind of spread their wings and be creative, but they wanted to make Takahashi happy, and so they kind of stuck to it, and then he was rejecting it and changing it. This was recorded at Burnished Stone Recording Studios in Tokyo, and there's chorus work provided by Yamanaka, also known as Chico, Manami Kiyota herself, and Masao Kori. There are 91 total tracks on the soundtrack, and Nobuo Uematsu's record label, Dog Ear Records, assisted with not only production, but also publishing the OST album. What does the soundtrack to Xenoblade Chronicles sound like? Let's get into the 5 critical tracks. And you know, for the first track, we gotta start with main theme. This one is composed by Yoko Shimomura, and it is the title screen and main menu theme. Apparently it also plays at a moment when Face Nemesis is unmasked at Prison Island, a pretty key moment in the game, so you bring back in the main theme. Now, the piece originally starts with this iconic piano melody. You can see the Definitive Edition trailer. It's that piano that comes in at the title reveal, and it's really iconic for this game, but I feel like the clip here really shows this brilliant orchestral swell that Shimomura is so good at. The violins in particular in the back half of the clip really carry that prominent melody through. Just such a great piece. You kind of have to mention a main theme, usually for most games, I feel like, as far as it being iconic to the game, and I think this is no exception.
This is definitely a Shimomura piece through and through, though. Like, wow, you can hear the Shimomura on this from a mile away. It's super good. She is my favorite composer for a reason. She's a god among men. So.
And I feel like that's going to be a motif for other Shimomura songs on this list here. But we finally get into Ace Plus for track number 2 on the cutting room floor. This is Gower Plain. So sometimes there are inconsistencies with titles, like there's unofficial titles and unofficial translations from the Japanese title. So sometimes this gets referred to as Gower Plains, but in Smash especially, Gower Plain is the title here. This is heard in the daytime when the party is at Bionis' leg, apparently not including the refugee camp, and in the Colony 6 area outside of the Colony proper's main entrance. I love the Xenoblade fandom wiki for really digging deep on where you hear these stories, especially when I haven't played the game, but they really dig into descriptions here. So basically, like I would say, it's a big open world sort of theme on the Bionis, this organic, lush area. You generally see it in the Smash Brothers stage, where Gower Plain is the Xenoblade stage. This open area, gorgeous sky, green all around. And this music, my goodness, yeah, like, it totally expresses like the freedom of the world being open. I think the music just encourages exploration. I mean, big shout outs to the rhythm parts here. The drums really going at it. You know, you get some toms in transition. Also the acoustic guitar keeping up the rhythm and the energy of the pieces. And it's bright. The strings have this nice positive energy to it. It's a must to include on Critical 5 for Xenoblade Chronicles, Gower Plain.
Yeah, this is a magnificent song that, like you said, I'm familiar with it because of Smash. Unfortunately, the Gower Plain stage sucks. I know, hot take. It's a bad stage. But this song is, I see it listed a lot as like one of the best overworld songs ever. And I think it does generally belong on that list. I don't know if I'd put it at number 1, but it does generally belong there. It's a fantastic piece.
Yeah, it's just so melodically satisfying. I wanted to mention a piece by Manami Kiyota on this soundtrack though, and I did so here at number 3 on the Critical 5, and it's just a gorgeous piece here. This is Sartorial Marsh Night. So yeah, there is a day variation, but this night piece is gorgeous, heard in Sartorial Marsh. And this is where like the translations also can get a little weird, so sometimes it's referred to as Sator Phosphorescent Land or Sartorial the Shimmering Marsh. But yes, heard during the nighttime. It's this like slightly somber but beautiful piece. I love the piano being so prominent, the strings fleshing it out. You hear some winds in there, like some oboe, some clarinet. And you also hear vocals a little bit in the last little bit of this clip. But also it's more prominent at the very beginning of the piece that couldn't play here. Just gorgeous atmospheric music for this area. I really like this piece and wanted to include it just to show the composer variation.
This is very Ghibli-esque too. Like this sounds like something I'd hear in a Ghibli film personally. I've never heard this song. It is absolutely gorgeous. I agree. I keep forgetting that there are day-night variations in this game, even though like Gower Plain Night is in Smash, so I should remember easily. But something about night versions of songs sometimes just they hit different and good.
Yeah, it's a different mood, not as positive, but sometimes dangerous, sometimes pensive and reflective. But don't worry, we've got 2 more left on the Critical 5, and you're wondering, where are these 2 pieces? Don't worry, fam, I got your back. Number 4 on the Critical 5, this is Mechanical Rhythm. Mechanical Rhythm is primarily heard whenever the party engages an enemy in battle in the Mechanus areas of the game. Apparently except for Sword Valley. So yeah, it makes sense if you're taking on a mechanical enemy that Mechanical Rhythm would play. And oh, it is so difficult to pick a proper 30-second clip of this song because it opens for this piece with this really powerful electric guitar riff that you're just jamming away at it. You kind of hear it a little bit, an echo of it in the middle of the clip here. And just this banging drum part, so heavy on snare. It's so metal. But this clip is essentially the chorus where, the sound really opens up and just sends chills down your spine, I think. But then he even chills out a little bit with kind of like a mellow bridge. I feel like this song has it all. It's a great battle piece. And I do really like how hard and how metal it gets at the beginning.
This song is metal as hell. And the violin, I'd say you don't hear violin in metal very often, but that would be a lie. That's something that happens a lot more nowadays. But this one really takes it and runs with it. And yeah, this song absolutely rules. I'm very glad I believe I was familiar with it because of Smash beforehand. Same with the next song on the list. I didn't realize there were multiple battle themes in Xenoblade Chronicles, and that makes me even more excited to play it.
Absolutely. So yes, you're wondering out there, you had to pick this one for the Critical 5, didn't you? Of course I did. Of course I did. Number 5 on the Critical track. This is You Will Know Our Names. And once again, this is where you get the weird unofficial titles, also known as Those Who Bear Their Name. Apparently the original Japanese title is Na Okatsuru Monotachi, or Those Who Are Given a Name, when translated literally. So this is heard during unique monster battles. Apparently there's one exception there, but it will begin as soon as the unique monster has detected the lead party member. And it's also heard during a few boss battles. So really important song to the game, so much so that it was used as Shulk's victory theme in Super Smash Bros. It's another impossible 30-second clip, I gotta say. And I'll just put it out there, it's the best song on the soundtrack. Fight me. It's just incredible. That lead electric guitar solo, when it gets into the chorus, it'll just send you just far and away. It'll just really make you feel this song. And the guitar verse work is also incredible. Come on. This song is too good.
I do think you picked the right clip, though, because this is the part that I usually... It's either this or the intro that I usually think about with the... It's one of those two parts that I always think about when I think about this song. I don't think I can say any more than you've already said. This song rules. It's great.
It's the song from Xenoblade Chronicles. But it's such a good soundtrack that each of us have 2 on the cutting room floor. Joe, what are yours?
Yeah, these were mainly picked because, they're in Smash, so I know of them, and might as well be mentioned if they're in Smash. They must be popular or important. I don't know. My first one is Engage the Enemy. This is also known by its unofficial title, Confrontation with the Enemy, which is not nearly as good a title. It is apparently a pre-battle theme that is heard in about a dozen cutscene instances throughout the game, and it's this really melancholy rock song that I'm sure there's some wider context to it, and I'm kind of looking forward to finding out what it is. Because it's very good and it feels very sad. And my other song on the cutting room floor is Time to Fight. Or if you're really in a hurry, you can call it by its unofficial title, Fight. This one was composed by the god herself, Yoko Shimomura, heard whenever the party engages an enemy in battle in the Bionis area of the game. So it is the sort of counterpart to Mechanical Rhythm. And hey, I mentioned that the main theme felt very Shimomura. This song is Kingdom Hearts.
It might as well be, yeah.
This was ripped out of a Kingdom Hearts game and put into this game, I swear.
But yeah, it's an important theme in the Bionis area, so important to cover. But yeah, it's just amazing how a composer can just have that style that makes you think of her other work. So good. My first one on the cutting room floor, this is An Obstacle in Our Path. This has the unofficial title of One Who Gets in Our Way. It's heard apparently during the great majority of boss and story exclusive enemy battles throughout the game, which means these are scripted encounters where a green barrier gets put up and the party has to defeat all the enemies before you can move on. I feel like the piece is on the whole more remembered for these jun 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 low guitar parts. But I wanted to include the full sound hit here in the clip because it's great. And it's also an important boss theme, so boss themes are always good. It's kind of important to include them. But I also like my other song on the cutting room floor, and this is Unfinished Business. Once again, Yoko Shimomura. I feel like if we don't mention Shimomura or Kyoto, it's Ace Plus. Let's just put it out there. A lot of these great battle songs, Ace Plus, Kudo, Chico. So let's put that out there. But this piece, Unfinished Business, is another pre-battle theme. It says it's heard in the cutscene outside of the Ether Mine on Freight Road when Dixon and Dunben arrive to help the party against Metalface and his Mechon forces. Yeah, okay, I'll take your word for that. Yeah, another case of it sure being a Shimomura. This orchestral swell is was so good. And it's it makes me think of that track Scala ad Caelum from Kingdom Hearts 3. Just incredible. So Shimomura, absolutely.
Yeah, Skal Ad Calum there. Yeah, that's the one. This definitely feels like one of the games she would have worked on before heading off to do like Final Fantasy 15 and Kingdom Hearts 3.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a good way of putting it. So what will I never forget about this game that I have not played? I listened to You Will Know Our Names for about a half hour straight. I think I was in Super Smash Brothers anticipation mode after I discovered it through Shulk's trailer. It's such a good song that when you can listen to a song that long and not get sick of it, it's pretty powerful. So honestly, it is really one of Wii's best soundtracks in a series that, fortunately now has some commercial success. It's a series that's going to continue. I'm sure they're working on another Xenoblade game as we speak right now, especially with how well 2 did on Switch.
I'm very much looking forward to playing this for Smasherpieces. I think it's among my most anticipated of the games that I have not played. It is up there with like Metroid Prime and stuff like that. I am not 100% sure I'll like the battle system, though I can't imagine I won't. I'm told it's very similar to FF12, and I didn't really like FF12 all that much, but I'm told it's also like FF12 if the original did it good. So. Yes.
Yeah, I've definitely heard those comparisons as well. I think that's very fair. And maybe someday I'll get to the definitive version on Switch. I'll buy it or something like that. But here's the problem. I just came off finishing a 100-hour JRPG. It'd be real tough to get into another one right now. But for soundtracks and games that, are often forgotten entries from some of our favorite game composers, I think it makes for a pretty good episode this week on Original Soundchat. So that will do it for us. You can find me on Twitter at PeteSpeakeasy. Joe is over at the Dobaga. The video version of the show is on the Rhymes with Asia YouTube channel, also at rhymeswithasia.com. But it's that MP3 podcast version that you want on Anonymous Dinosaur at anondino.squarespace.com. That is also the place that you can check out Joe's other podcasts, Smasherpieces. And you can find all those podcasts on podcast services around the globe, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, even on Spotify. But also Spotify has this big playlist where you can hear video game songs that we've mentioned on the show before. If we talk about it and it's on Spotify, it gets added to that playlist. Joe, are any songs getting added this week?
Unfortunately, Xenoblade being a first-party Nintendo title, well, second-party Nintendo published title, no, not on Spotify. And Shantae as well, WayForward does not seem to have any of their titles on streaming services at this time. So, unfortunately, nothing being added this week.
And then you can find us on social media at Soundchat OSD. Leave us some feedback for how we're doing, as well as suggestions for games that you'd like us to cover. And hopefully we'll get to some bonus tracks soon. Because, hey, congrats. You're done with your schoolwork. That's amazing. I'm so proud of you.
Finally. It's about damn time.
All right, Joe, who are we talking about next week?
Next week, I will be talking about Chris Remo.
I will be talking about Jeff Russo. Interesting themes of games. Yeah, I'm hoping to play both of them this week, but we'll see how I do with that. All right, to play us out, you got to talk about a cover of You Will Know Our Names. And I'm sure so many people have covered it on YouTube. But I found one from Dr. Pez VGM. And his YouTube channel, he does a whole bunch of video game covers. I really like his Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire, this mega medley that he does. It's so good. Because he's skilled with brass instruments, and of course that's the perfect game, right? Ruby and Sapphire with those trumpets. But Dr. Pez VGM did a cover of You Will Know Our Names, like a band cover. And it definitely features trumpet and French horn. And it sounds really good. I really enjoyed it. I think you will too. Thank you so much for listening this week on Original Soundchat. We'll see you next time. Take care.